can. So if anyone does experience this as well, you just hit refresh on your browser tab. That usually clears it up quite quickly, which is good. But yeah, Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Really good to have you here. So these webinars are a great way to connect in with the community and tell your story and also empower people, which is what you're all about with Hummingly and a lot of work you've done in the past. Just before we kick off for the community, if you do have any questions throughout, if you ask them in the question section on the bottom right-hand side, that way people can upvote them, and it's super helpful for us to kind of circle back around and answer the questions either throughout or towards the end. But I guess without further ado, Elizabeth, do you want to share a little bit about who you are?
Absolutely. First, I'd just like to really acknowledge the wisdom that we have with our participants here. I know many of them, so thank you so much for joining us, and please send in some questions.
Oh, I seem to have lost the volume. Has anyone else lost volume? Lost audio, lost. Yeah, okay. Elizabeth, I think you'll need to re-plug in your headset if that's what you're operating from, if you can still hear me. Yeah, it's a good point. Elizabeth, I think you've muted yourself, so you'll just need to hit unmute on that. Won't be a moment, folks. Thank you for your patience. You can see the microphone. Yeah, so on your profile, you'll be able to see there's a toggle mic, or there's a mic with a line through it. If you click on that, that will unmute. But your settings will also be set to your headset, so you have to keep using that unless you change your settings. We'll just do some live troubleshoot. You get, okay. If you, okay, one second. So if with the settings in the top right hand corner, sorry folks, one moment. At the top settings in the top right hand corner, you can click that and you can change your settings if you want to stop using your headset and just set to your internal default speaker and mic. Yeah, that's the one. Just while you're doing that, if you haven't already, folks, if you grab yourself maybe a cup of tea or a coffee if you haven't really got that, bear with us. Really appreciate your patience. We're just updating the settings. It all of a sudden started causing quite an echo for Elizabeth. I can indeed, but not through Crowdcast. So if you've changed that setting, you should now be able to toggle your mic. Do you see the mic?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Bingo.
Okay. Bingo. All right. Okay. All right. All right, folks. That's the hardest bit. That's the hardest bit. That's the hardest bit.
Solution for that is if you've got another tab open, you need to close it.
Okay.
Cool.
How are we going?
The echo seems to have stopped on my end. Okay, echo off. We got there.
Okay, so you can hear me well?
We can hear you well.
Excellent.
Hear you well, we can see you well.
Okay, do we have Casey?
Can everybody hear me as well?
Oh, good. We've solved it. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thanks everyone for your patience. Sometimes this happens. We actually did do a tech class this morning.
Just see if we can get Casey back, and then we are good to go.
So I think from the audience side, they can hear me, Elizabeth. Can you not hear me at all, or is it just that you can't see me? I think we've got a problem with audio on Elizabeth's
Excellent.
side.
Thanks, guys.
Hear me. Sometimes these happen. We did a check last week and this morning too, and I think the earphones just blew up right now.
Okay, we're all good to go. I just don't have you.
Yeah, so the audience can hear me on their side. So if you try and refresh your browser, I think that's probably going to be the way to go. So it's coming through. If for some reason this hasn't picked me up on your side.
So I just go to the top bar and push enter and it'll refresh.
The reload the page. If you try that, that should refresh it.
Okay. Then it will make me leave the page.
Yeah, it will. And then you'll pop back up again.
Yep.
But that's probably
Okay.
the other options have already done it. Otherwise, I can reload mine. Maybe if I do it on my side, that will help you.
Maybe if you reload your slide, that might help. Thanks. We will.
All right, Elizabeth, can you hear me now?
Excellent.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Okay. So we've left everyone hanging with that question, who am I?
Yes.
Is that where we're up to?
Next. There's still
Okay.
echo. Is there a second tab open?
No, I closed it. My goodness, this is a tech disaster. Is that okay? It is a tech crisis, testing our resilience. We need to role model this resilience.
I'm hearing backfeed. Quite loud. Can anyone else hear that? I appreciate everyone. So awesome. You can backfeed for your case. Okay. Elizabeth, I think you'll have to try. Usually we'll fix it.
Reload the page. Okay.
Yeah. We'll get there. We will get there. How is everybody today in the chat? All right.
Okay, how are we now?
Still back on my side. I'm gonna do a quick swap to a headset. My side. All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Still an echo. So with your headset, Elizabeth, was it
significant
echo?
I couldn't hear myself. It was so bad. How's that?
Go again.
How does this
That's
sound?
awesome. Yeah, that's fixed it.
Okay, we've got there.
Okay, cool.
Excellent.
Touchwood, I think we've solved it. Definitely a tech crisis.
Yes. So moments of disruption are always opportunities to learn and temporary.
Absolutely. And I definitely just say a quick thank you and shout out to the community for being so patient on that, and also helping us troubleshoot as well has been super, super helpful. All right. So to the question that everyone's been pondering and the suspense that was built. Elizabeth, who are you?
Oh my goodness, too much anticipation now. I am first and foremost, I'm a mum to a gorgeous 10-year-old boy. I come from the Hawke's Bay, so I'm from Napier. And I'm also a bit of a disaster geek. So you could say my career has quite literally been a series of disasters all around the world, really kicking off with the Boxing Day tsunami and learning as much as I could from then, working to support disaster affected people all over the world. I'm also the co-founder and director at Hummingly, and Hummingly is a business that supports people to do stress and uncertainty well. So, having taken all of this knowledge with my co-founder Jolie Wills, who's a cognitive psychologist, we have created products, and we create and have created what we really think people need to help them through times of stress and uncertainty.
Wow, a lot to unpack in there. How did you get involved in the crisis side of things? Where was that first entry point that you got involved?
Well, I actually come from a long line of nurses. I mean, pretty much all the women in my family are nurses. You know, my sister, my stepsister, my mother-in-law, my grandmother's, like this long line of nurses. And with that, they have taught me incredible things about resilience and empathy and strength and how to lead in those ways. But the whole medical thing is just not my jam. And so, but I did want to help others, serve others, and follow in those traditions. And so disasters were an opportunity for me to do that. And also, disasters and disruption are a huge opportunity for change. It's an opportunity for us to learn so much about it ourselves, but also an opportunity for us to shift the needle on things in society and to redevelop in ways that are beneficial for more people. And that is exciting to me.
Absolutely, and I suppose we've all experienced a lot of that recently with COVID, where everyone's kind of had to stop and reflect a lot and do a lot more kind of introspective thinking compared to the normal kind of busy, busy, busy cycles that the world kind of goes in. So I'm hearing that you got inspiration from your family and the long line of nurses. Was there something else that inspired you to go down this pathway?
I think if I focus on one nurse in particular as my inspiration, it's very much my mum. She's nursed in war zones. She's nursed in outback Australia. She's run a hospice facility. She's done all of these amazing things, and she, was a solo mum, so it was just me and mum when I was growing up, and so the two of us went on adventures, and I really felt from her that anything was possible, and I felt that sense of empowerment from her, and that you could lead with empathy and kindness and compassion and still be strong. But then what's magic is another source of inspiration is very much for me is very much our Prime Minister, because I heard those same points coming from her and am seeing how she is leading in that way. And that also gives me an inspiration. I start to think, hey, I'm the right age to lead. I've got the right color lipstick. Let's go, So that congruence between how I was brought up and then the leadership we're seeing now has really got me fueled up and excited and inspired about how we can lead ourselves and our families and our communities and globally. And leadership's a thing that we can do no matter where we are, whatever context we're in. It's about who we are and what we do. It's not necessarily a position, right? Or needs to be something that's based in an organization. And through disruption, we can all find our feet to lead in new ways, whether that's at home or in our communities. And amazing things are happening in my community in Island Bay with people supporting each other. I think that's what we can really see in times like this, is what we can do together and how we can mobilize amongst ourselves.
Absolutely. I guess it's in challenging times that people can, and I guess, dig deep to prop themselves up to help others. And there can actually be a lot of strength that comes from, and a lot of internal healing and internal, I guess, fortitude when you are helping others. I've yeah, it's hits home. How have you approached personally the COVID-19 lockdown, and also what are some approaches that you've seen with other people as well?
The so I very much set up for lockdown with the end in mind. I thought, okay, well, how do I want to feel? What do I want things to look like for me, for my family, for our business, following this? And so there are a number of things that I set up to do that. One of the first things I did was set up my own personal board for my resilience and support. So I have 3 or 4 people who I asked and said, could you help me keep on track with my wellbeing goals? Could you help me keep perspective? Because one of the things that happens to us when our stress hormones are all raging is that we can really easily lose perspective on problems. So something really small can feel insurmountable, and that's really normal. And so I find my personal board really helps with things like that. And just, to keep me on track with, I've got this big hill out the window here, and one of my goals is to be able to run up that by the end of lockdown. So they keep me on track with that and just send me check-in messages, and I just feel the support of my personal board that I set up, And if you think about the work environment, we set up boards all the time to support and advise and guide us on certain issues. So I thought, well, why can't I have a crew to do that for me throughout the lockdown? And it also helps me be connected in a structured way, because connectedness is one of the most important things for getting through any crisis. But hope is not a method. I think it's important to be intentional about setting that up. So that has just been really great for me. The other thing is I set myself a lot of small targets. You heard about the one running up the hill, and my other one is learning some technology platforms. So bit of a fail on that one this morning, but that's been a huge. We got through it. But that's been a huge learning curve for me, and I always think in times of disruption, what can I learn from this? This will teach me things. It'll teach me things about myself, teach me new skills. When I get really frustrated, I'm like, being frustrated is part of learning. This is okay. So learning things is something I really focus on, small things at times like this.
Even within there's heaps to unpack. I love the idea of personal boards. I haven't done it in quite the same formal sort of structure, but I've definitely benefited so much from having close friends or family that I've been able to reach out to, and it's as simple as picking up the phone for the call. But the other thing as well is the impact that we can have on people within our network by checking on them and touching base with them as well. I think even the people that we're calling to bounce our own ideas naturally end up sharing some of the challenges that they might be going through. So it can be like a reciprocal personal board. But even if like you have people in your network that you're a little bit worried about, or even just you haven't talked to in ages, it's actually a really good opportunity to reflect on people in your life that you could take a moment to reconnect with, or just continue making sure you've got that connection with. I love that. So actionable and something that we can all do. What are your thoughts on setting those goals? Because absolutely, like, when you set a goal and you achieve it, it can be such the best feeling. And I think it even releases dopamine dopamine when you kind of tick something off, which is why it can be quite addictive to even like write to-do lists just for the sake of ticking things off. What are your thoughts on the balance, though, of making sure people don't set goals in a way that they stretch themselves too far or don't achieve them? And then, to your point before, sometimes things can feel like insurmountable kind of challenges. Is there a line there that you've got some thoughts around?
This might take a minute to explain, but to set my goals, I actually go back to the most amazing model of well-being. So Mason's Jury's model, Te Whare Tapawha, many of you may be familiar with that. Te Whare Tapawha is the 4 walls of well-being. It's this idea that for us to be well, that our whare, our house, our 4 walls need to be strong too. And I've learned a lot about this through my experience working in different disasters. I found I had this kind of performance bias towards 2 of the walls. So like taha whānau, the wall that looks at social connectedness, was really strong, right? I needed alliances, I needed relationships, I needed all of these things to make my work go well. Relationships are so important in times of disruption, but that's another point. And then taha hine ngaro, my psychological wall, that was really in good shape too. And it had to be for what I was seeing and what I was doing, disaster affected communities and the impacts, that takes a toll, and it takes a toll on your team, and you need to have a good framework sorted there. So these 2 walls in my whare, I felt really strong, right? Taha Wairua, sense of identity, sense of self, also in good shape. But then I had this other wall, like this crumbling mess of a wall, taha tinana, my physical health. And it was really not good. I remember a time I was in Bangladesh after a cyclone, and I was really unwell, and I was fossicking around a pharmacy really in the middle of nowhere. Nobody spoke English, fossicking around trying to find something, and the pharmacist was just like, here's the pharmacy, go for it, choose what you want. And I was like, oh my goodness, trying to make myself better so that then in my work I could go and help others, and I could report back on how others, affected people, how their well-being was going. And I didn't see the irony in it, that I was actually physically not well trying to support other people. That was just ridiculous. And so I really had to focus on rebuilding that wall, and getting a team of people around me who could really help me rebuild my physical health, because, they had things like autoimmune disorders and revolting cold sores all the time and all of these things. And I'd just work harder to compensate and then get sicker. And, there is a question there around being a martyr or being a professional, and I had to learn that. And so when I'm setting goals, I like to look at my whole whare, do a bit of a structural assessment, and look at what walls need strengthening, and what small things I can do to strengthen those walls every day. And that gives me a sense of perspective. And that's what I use to set my goals. Sorry, a bit of a long-winded answer, Casey.
That's an incredible answer. I don't know if I've got the right link. I believe I might. If I just put it in the chat before, which links to that. That's profound. That's very strategic as well on building up goals that help build up your 4 walls. And yeah, there we go.
Yeah. The thing is, I did some global research, and I talked to 100 recovery leaders around the world. And, I said to them, what is the number one characteristic that you look for a leader during times like this or times of disruption? And they said calm. But what they also said, which I found really profound, is that you lead others to where you yourself are at. So, for example, some of them had some real burnout issues, some mental health issues. And they said to me, but the scary thing was my team were 3 or 4 weeks behind me. Right? So there is this sense, whether it's in your family or it's in your community, you lead others to where you are at yourself. And so as a member of your family, as working in your community, you need to really think about your foundation, and to build your foundation strongly so you can support others. And that's why Te Whare Tapawhā has been so useful for me, because it's about building that whare and building that strong foundation so I can support or lead others to a place of calm, not chaos.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I guess that that also ties back into even like having a personal board, or touching on being able to reach out to other people in your network as well. Was after your interaction, being conscientious of the state that you leave them in. Did you leave them in a better position, a calmer position, or did you leave them with more stress and anxiety and worry on their mind? And it's not that anyone, I think, would ever intend to go into conversations creating that worry, but sometimes if they themselves are can be flustered on an issue or whatnot, sometimes that can be projected on other people. So that's such an interesting piece, is that we all play a part in directly impacting the people around us. And if we can be, what I'm hearing, conscientious to have that inner calm, then we leave other people in that state, and it's a ripple effect, right? Like then they have an interaction with someone, and if they're more calm, then it starts to cascade out. Wow.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Casey. I hate to use the word contagious at times like this, but stress or calm are contagious. And I'm not by any means saying that I can hold calm all the time. And I definitely have moments where I don't feel resilient. You know, some days, some weeks I feel more resilient than others, but that's where the personal board comes into play. That I can have that safe place to really vent, to let that stress fly, but then it's better managed for when I need to hold that space, hold that calm for others.
We definitely held the calm during our technical difficulties at the start.
It's one of the things that stresses me most, to be honest.
It's so funny as well, because we'd done 2 different tech checks, but that's the way it can go. The next question that we were going to talk about was the importance of community and peers when running a business, and you've definitely already touched on this, but is there anything further that you'd add to that?
Yeah. Recently, my co-founder Jolie Wills and I have become Edmund Hillary Fellows. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is this amazing global fellowship with people from all over the world who are looking to really have great social impact, like-minded values and amazing skills. And I'm so grateful that we became part of this before COVID-19, because the support and the skills that other fellows have been offering Hummingly and offering us, and that I hope we have also offered others, has been tremendous. Also, if you look at the businesses after the Christchurch earthquakes, the ones that really survived or even thrived in times like this were the ones that collaborated. For example, you know, where they shared premises, or they found new ways to manufacture together, or competitors worked in collaboration. Those were the ones that survived and sometimes thrived through that disruption. So that's really been in my mind through this. And so looking for those opportunities has been, quite amazing to be part of. And of course, it's the first time I've been through a disruption like this in a business sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess for the different founders and entrepreneurs and people that in support capacities for them as well that are listening, being able to, I guess, tap into the community here, but also tap into other communities that are pertinent to whatever you're doing, and stay connected on the challenges, because a lot of the challenges, well, that we're facing are rooted in the same cause. Obviously, the challenges are different depending on what your business is and the way it's situated. But there's so many learnings to share and solutions to share, and it's when people come together that you might not know a connection or a solution that someone has just sitting there that they'd be happy to help you with, and vice versa. The difference you can make for other people as well. When I used to run something called Good, Bad, and Ugly down in Dunedin, which I believe actually came from Creative HQ. At least that's where I learned from about it from. And it was just an amazing little setting where at the end of the week, founders would come together and share something good, bad, and ugly that happened in that week. And just about every single time, we ran over 100 of them over the course of the time I was there. And just about every time someone would have a challenge that was meaningfully a challenge for them, and someone sitting just across from them would say, oh, why don't I connect you with this person, or have you considered this? And they might not have considered that, and quite often breakthroughs happen in just those little moments. So I guess not to underestimate the power of community and your peers, and the solutions you can provide and that they can provide from you as well.
I think one thing to be wary of is in times like this, when we do feel stressed, when things are uncertain, we have a habit to pull together those that are closest to us, those that we have the greatest trust with, because that makes us feel more secure and safer. But quite often we need new people or diversity of thought to solve complex challenges. So I think we need to be really intentional and know that this happens and still step out into that discomfort, so that we can get the best minds to come around and help us solve problems. And also just to be really gentle if you are offering help or support, that you do it in a way that you first look to establish a relationship and trust before anything else.
Absolutely. And on the topic of that, what role does trust play in a crisis?
I think it's the oil in the engine. It really, you'll hear a lot of people talk about some of the great things that have been achieved through different disasters. It's come down to the trust and the network that people have. It's all about relationships. And often we talk about, and everybody can maybe, if you feel like it, you can do this now, look at your address book and look at who's in there. Are there people from different sectors in there? Are there different people in there with different political views? Are there people in there from different industries? Do you have trust and connection with people who can help you solve problems in ways that you can just ring up and say, hey, I've got this problem, I need this right now, can you make it happen? And they'll say yes. Our resilience is very related to our connections, and it's a simple test. You can really have a look at your address book and see how set up it is to help you solve whatever problem might come your way.
And are there certain things that come to mind for building trust, or the components and the foundations of trust? It's a complex field that builds that, but I imagine that there's definitely fundamentals. Are there some that you'd narrow in on?
Really, to put it simply, it's to do what you say you're going to do, and follow up. I think quite often we can make throwaway offers, or we say, oh yes, I can help you with this, or I will do this, but especially during times of disruption, you might forget, or you think I'll get to it later, and you don't really. So I think a really key step is just to do what you say you're going to do, and start with small things and achieve those things together, and then go from there. Yeah.
So very much kind of hinged on reliability and consistency too. That like, if you trust someone to do something, you trust that they will do it. And the reason you trust that they'll do it is because they have shown consistency and a track record of not letting you down in the past. And I know that's a simple example of, and a little bit probably high level as well, but I suppose that applies to everything, right? And there's little tiny actions that we take on a daily basis that either reinforces or can take away from the trust and the interactions and the relationships that we have. And yeah,
I
interesting.
think the other thing is, like, through these periods of disruption, when people are feeling a lot of stress, our relationships can get quite tatty and strained, and there's this kind of tension. I mean, I saw it at the supermarket and the other day. I thought there was going to be some biffo. So you can see and feel it all around you. And I think sometimes people project that on us. So people might say something hurtful or something out of line, and our normal response might be to take that personally and address it. But I think in times like this, it's really important to see it in its context and to think, actually, that is a projection of what is going on. I'm choosing not to take that personally right now. I'm just going to give that some space and then come back to that relationship again a little bit later. And so that in that way, you are maintaining your relationships and just keeping the door open to keep building trust going forward.
That makes a lot of sense. Switching gear a little bit. What can be learnt from a crisis to assist? And I suppose that, to be honest, actually, I interrelated. But what can be learnt from a crisis to assist our community with their wellness?
Wow. I think it comes back to what opportunities there are that come from disruption and crisis. And I've been thinking about that a little bit. Back in the Asian Boxing Day tsunami days, Bill Clinton coined this phrase called "Build Back Better." The bit of that phrase I don't like is the back, because we're not returning to a previous state. What we are is creating a new future. So maybe we could talk about it in terms of building forward better. But the idea of it is that in a time of mass disruption, we can build forward in a way that reduces our risk to future disasters, or we can build forward in a way that increases our risk to future disasters. So thinking about our current times, thinking about COVID-19, I've been thinking, and many others have, about how we can build forward better. And because the deeper crisis, the deeper disruption in all of this is climate change. We have been saying, and my colleagues have been saying in this industry for decades, that the intensity and the frequency of disasters is just going to increase. And we're starting to hear unprecedented, the Australian bushfires, unprecedented global pandemic, biggest thing since World War II, It's unprecedented is our new normal. And also, global pandemic meets disaster is probably on our horizon as well. And so
Scary
actually, yeah, but this is our new world. So we can use this disruption, we can use this current crisis to build back and make smart climate investments that mitigate the next climate disaster, right? We can put our investments into adaptation. We can put it into, mitigating flooding. We can do all sorts of things. And that's kind of a big example, a smaller example, but that I still think is an amazing example that we can all put our weight behind, is if you think about people with disabilities, one of their biggest challenges some people have faced is accessibility, right? That buildings and the systems and our structures create barriers. And through COVID-19, we've actually all learnt that remote working is possible. It's doable, and in some cases it's preferable. So I would hope, say, that coming out of that, some of those barriers for people with disabilities might be removed, and people's attitudes might be more inclined to hire people who have accessibility issues. So there are so many opportunities and possibilities. Those are just two that have been on my mind recently. But I'd encourage everybody to think about how we could build forward in small ways within your home, within your family, and really take what we've learnt and the opportunities to go forward. I was speaking with someone yesterday, and they've been out the back of their property. They have a stream, and they've been boat building with their kids and letting the boats down the stream. And, you know, they'd said we hadn't even thought to do that with our kids. You know, they were stuck on devices, and now we're doing these kind of activities. I mean, what beautiful learning to take forward into the future.
Absolutely, and just echoing what Alan just in the chat, love the building forward better. And I guess there's like we've probably all seen, for example, the satellite images over countries in Europe and China, where the pollution has just absolutely dropped because of the change in activity. And while when the world hopefully returns to being able to function again as soon as possible, as you're putting forward, we don't have to go back to exactly the way things were. It could be, but the new normal could look different, right? And while there's going to have to be an element of, say, from a manufacturing perspective, the demand is going to create a lot of factories to reopen and all this sort of thing. There's still an opportunity to reevaluate at least some of it, the way we're doing it, to have a positive impact. And behavioural change is such a tough thing. But I guess like we've all had to dramatically shift our behaviour, and this is an opportunity to try reshape that, and even where we put our energy on being more conscientious of where we spend our money as well, because that's such a powerful way to influence the future as well. Is like where we spend our money is a reflection of the world we create. Is something that was framed by Ella Lawton, who's a sustainability expert down in Queenstown, and there's so much truth to that. I mean, and we even see this with the challenges of say local restaurants, right? Of the reason they're struggling right now with their businesses amidst all the challenges that have happened is ultimately because they're not getting revenue through the door. We're not able to spend. It's not that we don't want to, but we're not able to spend. But that fundamental piece of where we spend our money can make or break businesses and the direction that the world goes. And yeah, that's a powerful piece. I love that. Build forward better. That's pretty powerful.
I think the other thing is we have a deck of cards called Cards for Calamity. So they help people navigate their lives after natural disasters. And there's just one card that came to mind through this conversation, and I'll just read it to you. So I don't know if you can see that. Within the word emergency is emergence. Disaster signals a departure from certainty, safety, and normality. Recovery from disaster is both about pain and discovery. The question to contemplate is, what could emerge in me, my life, and my community as a result of this experience? So I just wanted to share that question with everybody here today. Questions are so powerful, and it's really important at times like this that we ask good questions, ask the right questions of ourselves, of others, at the right time. Questions are so powerful, and to just take the time to meaningfully listen, even if you don't agree with the other person. These are the ways that together we can find our way forward, because we're not going back. There's no going back to the same after a big disruption.
Absolutely, it's going to be a new normal, and I guess there's things that we can predict what that new normal looks like. But if I'm hearing, understanding this correctly as well, we're also in the process of creating what that new normal can look like, and that's an empowering thing that we can play a part in helping shape that. On the topic of questions, we had a question from Ruben. Thank you for your question, Ruben, which is, it's been said one becomes the average of the 5 people that they most closely associate with. Would it be fair to suggest this might hold true not only professionally, but perhaps emotionally, interpersonally, and other behavioral aspects less tangible?
I think that's a great insight. I absolutely think that holds true. But knowing that, what do we do about it, right? So I quite often will look at my calendar for the week and just look at the types of people that I'm speaking to, because that tells me also how I'm being influenced. I think it's really important too to think of the voices that we're not listening to or that we're not hearing and that we need to reach out to, especially if we're in positions where we have resources or we are making decisions that have an impact on others. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for your question, Ruben. We've got another question from Alan. What questions should we be asking of our leaders at work, leaders in governments, leaders in our work and personal communities?
Funnily, I have a card for that. This is the one that we share in terms of those questions. What decisions are being made to make our communities safer for future disasters? What trade-offs are being made when resources are scarce, and you need to be prioritised? Trade-offs are always being made. For example, do you do something quickly but you trade off quality, or do you do something safely but at what cost is that? So I'd really be interested in, when decisions are made, to really understand the trade-offs of those decisions. And they can be decisions at home or decisions at work, don't need to be big ones. Will new facilities be accessible for everyone? Who are resources benefiting? Who is your leadership benefiting? Which voices are not at the table? I would ask those questions. And coming back to the environment, what impact does this decision have on the environment currently and for future generations? Those are some of the decisions, some of the questions I think we should be asking, but there are so many. One I ask of myself constantly is, what am I learning from this? When things are annoying me, when they're frustrating me, when they're triggering me, okay, what am I learning from this? And if I just keep that question really present, it helps me feel a sense of progress, that actually I am growing from this disruption. And that's the other thing that's amazing, is that, and I've seen everywhere, is that disruption like this, it pushes at our boundaries in all sorts of different ways. You'll be feeling your boundaries pushed in different ways at home and at work. You'll be pushed into uncomfortable zones. The good thing about those uncomfortable zones is that is where we grow. Yeah, so to constantly ask myself, what am I learning here? And as a business, we are constantly asking, what are we learning here as a business? Is so helpful.
Thank you for answering that. Another question we've got from Simon. What might a new normal look like in New Zealand? I would like to see a kinder and gentler community and fewer people struggling to survive. My name seems to have vanished now. It's still there, Simon, but great question.
I think it starts with us as individuals. So if that is our goal, how can we be kinder and in our everyday interactions? How can we build our families and our communities in ways that are kinder and that are stronger? Because if individually we all aim and strive for those things, then collectively that's what we will become. I think one of our cards is around greatness is a million little moments of your best self. and we can't be our best selves all the time, although these crises we can kind of see our best and worst selves coming out and learn about that in ourselves. But if we just
Absolutely.
focus on having as many small little moments of us being great, and then, look at that and how in our families, coming back to the boats being floated down the river up the back of the property and having a great time together as a family, right? That's a moment of the family feeling that's a great moment, and we just focus on those little things, and we just demonstrate and role model the behavior we want to see and the values that we hold as precious as a nation. I think that's how we move New Zealand forward.
Mm. I've got a question that's a personal question, circling back around trust being a foundation of where resilience sits and the connectedness and the mobility of people to work together. One of the things you touched on was that inherently with trust, it's doing what you say you're going to do. What are your thoughts on the intersect when you may already be at capacity? And I know there's a lot of people here that just have so many things on the go and they want to help. But sometimes they're not in a position to help. So I think that's where sometimes people can give answers where they have good intentions, but potentially they're slow on the follow through, or they're not able to circle around. What's that line? I know this is a long-winded question, but what's that line between being as helpful as you can, but also respecting the boundaries of making sure that you only commit to doing to saying you're going to do what you're going to do?
It comes back to knowing when you're at capacity. And actually, disasters do teach us a lot about what our limits and what our capacity is, and being really self-reflective and aware to know if you're in a position to offer help, or if you're in a position where you need to find that courage to ask for help. Because if you offer to do something for someone and you don't do it, you have given them hope that you will help them on something and taken it away. And you won't feel good about it either. So I think it's important not to make offers that you can't fulfill.
Absolutely.
But equally, yeah, I just don't do that. But on the other hand, there's also grace in asking for help. And undoubtedly, working in disasters, I've had to ask for help a lot, whether that's in terms of resourcing and whatever. And, it can be a really nice way of building trust and strengthening relationships, because no doubt I need help one week and the person that's helping me will ask me for help a following week, right? So it can help build and strengthen relationships. Showing that vulnerability allows others to show that vulnerability to you. And there's just as much grace as in receiving help as there is in giving it, I think.
Absolutely. I guess that's where my question came from as well. Is you've done so much work in the crisis space where quite often you'll have been in positions where you want to help, but you might be dependent on resources for the follow through of what that looks like. So I guess, as you say, it's also about the communication of making sure that you can ask for help, and then if you're in a position to help, then you do. So I guess communication's a big piece in there too. Being able
Yeah,
to ask
and
for help.
being honest about your offering. Yeah,
Mm,
I may be able to I will
right.
look for some resources, or I may be able to assist.
Which is a big difference
Um,
from I can give you this and I will give you this, right?
Exactly, yeah. And the other thing is, if you look at disasters around the world, often politicians will make big promises early on, and people hold on to those promises and they use them to build and plan their lives. And then those promises either financially can't happen, or there's technical issues why they can't happen.
Mm,
And we've seen this with the Pike River mine was an example of getting recovering the bodies from the mine, and many other examples, and you lose so much trust that's really hard to build back. And that's in a bigger sense, but it's also true in our everyday relationships, in our everyday lives.
mm. Absolutely. What are your next steps in your journey, Elizabeth?
Um, we are really at Hummingly. We are really passionate about moving the needle on how we lead and support people in times of stress and uncertainty. Coming back to my earlier comments that unprecedented is the new normal, we are working to really put our knowledge and to continue to learn and to create great stuff to help the world through that. So that's our mission and that's the journey. But coming back to that idea of emergence, we're very open to that. And so we're looking at new ways of doing things in this context. We're looking at who we can work with, who we can support, how we can be of service at this time, and what emerges from that we're open to. And that's the beautiful thing about this type of disruption is you don't quite know what will emerge, and it can be things you've never thought of. Already in our business, we're looking at things we'd and working with people we'd never thought about before, and that there's excitement in that. So, yeah, we'll see where the journey takes us.
Absolutely. And Kylie's put a comment in the chat. If you'd like to find out more about Cards for Calamity, here's the link. So, folks, if you check that out, well worth it. I'm also putting in, I'll put in the Hummingly link too, so that people are able to visit you there. What do you think? Just in closing, I'm just conscious of time. What do you think the future is for New Zealand? I know that's a broad question, but where would you narrow in on something maybe that you're excited about, how we can build forward better?
I come back to my two key issues, very much around climate investment, and also what we can do for people with disabilities. Also, I think something that's really exciting me is the global leadership that New Zealand is showing, both politically but also in the way that our people are approaching this lockdown and coming together and making it happen and having a big goal of eliminating COVID-19. I think that is a powerful role model also for the world. And I know there are a lot of amazing businesses that are really, they've got those Kiwi values, they're making some really amazing products, and they are exporting those to the world. So I think that there are really exciting possibilities for New Zealand if we choose to take them, and if we all take ownership for them. There is another path as well, though, and my husband Jim, he wrote a book. It's climate fiction. It's called Star Sailors, and it's a dystopia story. And that's the version of New Zealand if we don't take action on climate change. It's Wellington in 2045, and it's a rollicking good tale, but it's based on research of one possible path that we could go down if we don't take these opportunities collectively. So there are different paths for New Zealand, and it's up to us as New Zealanders to determine what they are. Having said that, I think some of the values and the mobilisation and the collective spirit and the Kiwi values that we're seeing through this COVID-19 disruption are positive. It's just that we need to keep that happening, and just really we have to address this climate change crisis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So is this the book Aaron's just put in the chat? So Star Sailors, is that, can you confirm
Star
that?
Sailors.
Star Sailors.
Yes,
Okay,
Star
cool.
Sailors.
Really questions, making sure people can know the book and find that. We've also had a question.
Aaron, Aaron has made a nice point too. I think through this disruption and going forward, I think the role of the arts is really important, and creativity. So how do we strengthen our artists, our comedians, if you look at the fabulous creativity that New Zealand has, and use that to communicate, to mobilize, to storytell, to share messages, to build momentum, I think that creativity is what could take us on a positive path. And mobilize us and make us laugh and feel good and be on the right track.
Absolutely. And it possibly has a touching point with a question Lena asked on how do you suggest with COVID-19 fatigue, with messaging, the media, etc., everyone has their own interpretation of the rules, and how best to manage what we read, watch, and manage those around us. Like we're in information overload, right? But we also, so we want to kind of like, in many ways, not be absorbing so much, especially stuff that can be negative. But on the other side, we want to make sure we're informed and in a position to lead by example and influence those around us in a positive way. And I imagine the arts, like being able to tell stories as well, absolutely touches in there. Do you have any thoughts around how we best manage that?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that and how I set myself up for this lockdown, because I like to be informed, but it comes back to what we were saying, right? Like stress and and those feelings are contagious, and I just have really limited my media consumption. So I really look for what the Prime Minister's saying. I go to one or two reputable websites a day, and that's it. Because and I am really conscious of that too in my family. My son sings a song every time the COVID ad comes on TV, because it's really important that it doesn't overload him either. So it's about finding that balance of being informed but not overloaded, and going to a few credible sources of information, and also being active too with misinformation. In a nice way. Coming back to the supermarket again, people barking at each other. That's not 2 meters, and really getting into it. And so it's about how we inspire people to really come together and to unify, but try and keep calm and not yell at each other and call each other out in ways that undermine each other's mana.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time today. It's just been full of gems on both an inspirational level, looking at things from a wider perspective, but also drilling down on some real tangibles and action items that we can follow. Like for me personally, hearing you talk about the 4 walls and making sure that you're setting goals that build yourself up as a real tangible action item, and even like your personal board. I think that's something a lot of people can action that will help themselves and help others. What you just touched on with the supermarket as well, that's very much, as you're talking about, it's about having that calm and how we leave other people. So much in this. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the community for jumping on. And Elizabeth, do you have any final words you'd say to the community before we jump off?
I see many familiar names, and it's just been a joy to watch the comments pop up, and it's given me that sense of connection with some of you that I haven't seen for a while, but deeply respect. So thank you so much for joining this, and that's been the real joy of this for me. So thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you.